So from everything I know about you guys, you guys are all engineers. So with that being part of your background, how did you start to engineer the solution that you guys saw for the problem?
Oh man, it's time for another episode of No Label Live, the show all about labels and how they can be your biggest adversity or your biggest advantage. The choice is yours. Each week, we bring on inspiring guests to share their story about how labels have impacted their life and the work that they do. So let's strap in and join this conversation.
Alan, Anthony, and Aditi, man, you guys are creating something that is very special and very needed in the world today. And so, from everything I know about what you guys are up to, we started this pandemic, and everybody's practicing as I would say, the physical distancing from each other. And so you guys are sitting wherever in your dorm, in your house, and who had the spark to like start talking about loneliness, and how did it become what it is today for you guys?
Yeah, for us, it was just like brainstorming different ideas. We saw that there were a lot of issues happening because of COVID and just in society at large. But then we thought about what was most important to us and what was most important to be solved right now. And we thought that loneliness was the issue.
And so as you guys thought about that being the problem to solve right now, was that because it was something you guys were feeling, or like how did that come about?
Yeah, I think it was something that we were feeling, and we kind of thought that just based on a lot of news articles, a lot of things that we were seeing coming out, that just because seniors were in situations where they oftentimes couldn't leave the house for anything whatsoever, and they didn't really have access to a lot of the resources that we have, like social media, things like that, to basically like call people on a regular basis. We thought that they would also be going through that. I guess something that all of us have kind of experienced was the idea of going from like an environment that's inherently extremely social. There's people surrounding you at all times in college, and going back to basically having to adjust to a completely different style of learning from a situation where you're basically back by yourself. So I think we felt loneliness, and we thought that if we were feeling it, the senior population was also probably going through it as well. And I think that's something that we really wanted to combat when we made this.
Yeah, and as you guys talk about and I talk about, I mean, we we often think about it from an aspect of it being an individualized thing, but statistics show that 63% of Americans are dealing with loneliness, and I imagine that number is going up currently. So when we see stats, they're going to be going up. So from everything I know about you guys, you guys are all engineers. So with that being part of your background, how did you start to engineer the solution that you guys saw for the problem?
Yeah,
Well, we started.
you got it.
All right, cool. Yeah, we started out just to see if people were interested. So we started out running a Google form. I think we put up the website in a few days and put the Google form on there. And lo and behold, a bunch of people started signing up. And that's when we realized that people right now really do need what we're building and that we're making an impact. And when we saw that, we wanted to make the solution as scalable as possible. So as engineers, we were like, let's just build this software now that can be used by as many people as we can help. And so we went on to build a full sign-up system, user account system, chat system, and so on. And we've pretty much just been working night and day nonstop to try and get this platform going. And we want to make it so that it can help as many people as possible. And that's how we approach it from an engineering standpoint.
And so when you talk about help as many people as possible, what does a positive outcome look like for you guys? Or what's an end goal that you have when you're talking big and many as they connect with one another?
Our end goal, above all, maybe it's crazy, but we want to eradicate loneliness. That's our mission.
Well, hey, I'm on that mission with you, so you're not alone.
Hey, that's awesome. Yeah. But for us to consider what we're doing a success, I think we already considered it a success. If we can help one person, if we can help two people, that was our goal starting out. And we've done that. So I think we're going to keep trying hard, and we're going to go towards that long-term mission. But no matter what, we've tried our best to help people, and we'll continue trying. And we see that as a success.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about loneliness, right? Loneliness is a signal from our body, and it's a signal like hunger and thirst, and it's just telling us that, hey, you're not as connected as you were before, or your body's like, okay, we need to find our tribe and be connected with ourselves and with those around us. So I'm curious from each of you, what does your definition of connection look like?
That's a really good question. I guess from my perspective, I would say connection is basically just finding someone. It could be anything from like a random stranger that you make eye contact with and exchange a smile with, or someone who's like your best friend, but just having someone who basically you can look at and you can know that they're basically thinking about you, you're thinking about them, and you have something that you're sharing. Like I said earlier, it can be something very simple, or it could be years of friendship, or even just like a short conversation with someone on a bus, something like that, where you're basically just exchanging a little part of your day with them and they're doing the same.
Yeah, for me, connection is empathy. So it's about understanding what someone else is feeling, and feeling it together. Because as humans, we're not just by ourselves. We're constantly connected with people. We're part of networks, more and more. So I think it's about understanding what someone else is feeling and what they're going through.
And I agree with everything Alan and Aditi said, but I also want to add on. I think like the best kinds of connections are energizing, and it doesn't have to be long or short. It could be, I think there are studies showing it could be just as simple as like a smile or just like eye contact, and connection, when it's done right, is really energizing, and it helps you get the energy to go through your day.
Yeah, hey, I'm down with all those definitions. So when I think of it, I think of everything in terms of relationships, and the way that I define a relationship is it's a collaboration of energy, because that can be, you can have relationship with people, you can have relationship with ideas, and you can have relationship with material things. And I really think that energy does play a huge role in that. So I heard that you guys had some experience with nursing homes or care facilities, and that's something that kind of played a little bit of a role in this. I'm curious about how your experience in those settings has helped you during this project.
Yeah, so we all volunteered at nursing homes when we were younger, in middle and high school. And I think we always gained a lot from those experiences. But now we understand that it's tough for them more than ever to stay connected because of COVID. And those residents are stuck and sometimes alone. And that's a huge issue that we wanted to solve. But it's interesting though, because we started out, that was our main issue that we were combating, but we realized that the issue of loneliness is not an issue isolated to seniors. It's it crosses generations and race and whatever definitions or types of people there are. Everyone at some point feels lonely, and and I think that's why our mission is not to eradicate loneliness in the senior population, but for everyone.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because there's such a negative connotation when
Yeah.
it comes to loneliness, but in reality, it's being able to figure out, is it something that's been chronic, or is it like that first time that feeling is coming up for you? Because we all deal with it, like you said, at any given time we can experience loneliness, but the question is it an ongoing thing? And one of my core beliefs is that a lot of times we're walking around and we have labels that we wear. And I think one of the biggest labels that causes loneliness is the idea that we're supposed to be something that somebody else told us we were supposed to be. And we're not actually living as ourselves, like we're living up to the expectation of somebody else. So what do you guys feel like is a misconception that maybe you've learned as more conversations have been had on your platform, but what do you think is a big misconception about loneliness?
I think something that we've seen is like the misconception that younger people are, because we have access to like so many different like ways of staying connected, that means we're less lonely. I don't think that's really true. I think, like you were saying earlier, the idea that you're portraying yourself as someone else, especially like on different social media channels, it's oftentimes about appearing a certain way, or like basically acting a certain way for public perception that's not oftentimes generally true to who you actually are. And I think a lot of people assume that because we're always active on these different communication channels, that means that we're always social and having these connections that are so important. But I think oftentimes, especially for a lot of people in our generation, I think that idea is definitely not a lot of times true. And loneliness is a lot more prevalent than I think society wants us to believe.
What do you think is or will change the perception or the label that will make people feel comfortable in saying, hey, I am experiencing this? Because I think a lot of people experience loneliness, but they're afraid to say that they are because of that perception that makes me weak, or it makes me less than, or the idea that nobody wants to hear about my problems. I think that happens a lot. Like we're walking around and we say, I'm experiencing this, but nobody wants to hear about that.
Yeah, I think it's maybe it's an obvious solution, but I think it's just about talking. It's about recognizing it for yourself and then talking about it and being transparent, and then people learn from that and they understand that it's okay, and it becomes normal. I think people need to realize it's a huge issue, and it's not an uncommon issue. Like you were saying earlier, more than 63% of Americans report feeling lonely. So that's not like 5-10%. That's the majority of Americans, which is sometimes it's crazy to think about. But I think as long as we talk about it and we recognize that it's a problem, then we'll move towards solving it.
Yeah. Anybody else got any thoughts on that as well?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's really great to be having a conversation like this. For example, because really one of the most important sources of, especially young people now, the sources of how we talk about things is the media. And for us to have public discussions about loneliness really goes a long way towards helping to normalize it. and helping everyone to realize that like this is a problem that affects everyone. So yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great conversation, and I'm on board with the more we talk about it. And I think you use a great word there, Anthony, of the normalization, because I'm somebody also who has a disability, and that's another topic that a lot of people don't touch on. And I really do think it's about normalizing it and changing or shifting the perception of the label that it's something that's bad, that if it's bad, we don't want to talk about it, and we run from it, and we just push it under the rug, and that doesn't help society and the world as a whole. So what kind of stories are you getting, and like what's been your proudest moment through the creation of your organization?
I think the proudest moment, at least for me, I'm sure Alan and Anthony have things as well, was just when we were first starting out. We had one of our first matches go through, and at the end of the conversation, we got an email from the big who was involved, and she was basically like, "Oh my goodness, that was some of the most fun 48 minutes of my life. It flew by. I loved every minute of it." And I think that's when we realized that what we're doing is actually something that's making a difference. And I think just hearing those stories, seeing like all these like letters and emails from different bigs and minis talking about like how much this is helping them, I think that's been our proudest moments, just because it shows that this isn't like, I think oftentimes when we're doing something like this that's all online, it's very easy to feel like it's very like into a portal. You have these people sign up, you match them up, and they go. But you don't really know what happens a lot of times. So I think having those notes come back and those emails that basically say that this is something that's really helping, I'm really enjoying this, that makes this worth it, I think.
Awesome. What about you guys?
Yeah, similar thing for me. It's just seeing that we're making a difference in people's lives, and hearing unsolicited feedback, people just emailing us and being like, this really made a difference in my life. I really enjoyed my conversation. I made a real connection. It's pretty amazing that you can build a piece of software that connects people and creates real relationships that we know have lasted months and hopefully will last years on years. I think for me, that's the proudest thing.
Anthony, anything different for you?
Honestly, I agree with them. Like hearing back from our users is just the most rewarding thing.
Imagine how exciting it's going to be once more people are able to take this into the real world and start making the connections that aren't over the screen as we start to get out of quarantine and everything. That's going to be really amazing, and I hope people send in their stories to you guys when that stuff starts happening, because that'll be great to see.
Oh, that would be amazing. I know some of our bigs and minis live really far apart, but I know some of them live in the same city. I know one of our bigs told one of our minis, like, I can't wait till quarantine's over and then we can give each other hugs or something. So
yeah,
I think that would be really cool.
So I was thinking about the correlation between the nursing home. So as part of my job that I did before all this stuff, I taught in nursing homes, and I can relate to a lot of people are in those nursing homes and they don't have family that comes and visits them, and they have some of the most amazing stories. And I just wanted to, because you guys can probably make this happen. Here's an idea, right? So what if on your site there's a place where what we did in real life was we created a fishbowl, and so anytime anybody left, they could drop a piece of wisdom in the fishbowl. And so people could at some point see somebody's piece of wisdom that they left, and they could pull that out for encouragement during the day.
Oh,
That's an idea.
that is really cool. Yeah, I love that.
So I think there's just so many stories, and whether you're young or you're old, we all have stories. And I think this is a platform that you guys are providing where young and old alike get to share their life experiences with one another. So if I'm wanting to become a part of the project, if I'm wanting to volunteer, how do I make that happen?
You can go to our website at bigandmini.org, spelled bigandmini.org, and just hit that sign up button in the top right corner, and then you can make a connection happen.
And you guys have a little bit of a training, right? It's not a lot, but you've got a training that people go through before they get matched and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah, it's a super simple process. Sorry. Super simple process. Basically, after you sign up, you get an email with all the information. They'll have you read through a short document, basically detailing like do's and don'ts of internet conversations and just having a real meaningful connection over the platform, and then take a short quiz on it, and you'll be good to go.
And anybody can sign up, right? And you guys will figure out which category we fall into, right?
No, we actually let you decide.
Okay.
Yeah, so we let you, whoever wants to be a mini or big can be a mini or big, regardless of age or demographic or whoever they are. That's just what you see yourself as.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I'll have to look at that and see where I think I fall on that spectrum there. It's amazing what you guys are creating, and it all started with an idea, and it all started with the shift in the world. I have two final questions I want to ask you. So I want you to imagine that you are signing up to participate, big and many, but I want you to look at it from the perspective of many, and I want you to think about if you could have one more conversation with somebody who's made a big impact on your life, who's sitting on the other end of the screen.
Oh, interesting. I mean, I guess the go-to would be like parents. Of course, they would be sitting there pushing me on and supporting everything I do. I think that would be, if it, yeah, that's who it would be. If it were just anyone I could talk to,
Yeah.
I have my own big, actually. So
Okay.
I think I gain, her name's Susan, and I think I gain a lot from conversations with her. She teaches me about, she does a lot of environmental advocacy. So I learned a lot from those conversations. So I think everyone has a lot to offer. But if I were to choose one, it would be my parents.
Cool. What about you guys? Who's sitting on the other end of the screen for you?
I think personally, I would have my grandma. She's in India, so I don't really get to see her all that often, and she's basically losing her voice in a lot of ways due to just a variety of illnesses. So having conversations with her recently has been very difficult. So if we could have a conversation, I would really love that. I think, just to be able to talk about everything that's been going on these last couple months, and just catch up. I think that would be really nice.
All right. And
Yeah,
Anthony,
there's so
what
many.
about you? Oh, there you go.
So many people I would love to talk to. Every conversation is rewarding, but I guess if I had to choose one, I might choose my great uncle, I think the word for it is, my dad's uncle. And
Mhm.
yeah, so he's got a ton of wisdom, and every time we talk to him, we always gain a lot. And he's in China, so like we couldn't communicate in person, but to communicate virtually would still be super rewarding.
Awesome. And I love how each of you have somebody that did come to mind. And it's so interesting where we are in the world. I think if I were to choose somebody for myself, I think my grandma would be the person that showed up for me as well. Just because, again, it's that relationship, and it's I already know there's a built-in connection there, so it would just make me feel really, really happy. Um, and the final question that I've got for you is, how would you describe no label defines me? If no label defines me, how does that show up for you?
Oh. Never thought about that. Um,
Yeah, I guess for me personally, um, I think our society, just generally speaking, has all these labels that are attributed to people. Personally, I'm a girl in STEM, which is a label in itself. That's something that a lot of people are like, that's unusual. You shouldn't be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, having that idea that I can do what I want to do. It's there's no like boxes that I have to do this or explore this. I think that's one way that no label defines me. And then I think also just from a perspective of someone who loves doing a lot of different random things, people are like, you should follow this path, you should do XYZ, and then like end up in this location. I think having the ability to just try and do different things that just maximize the impact I can have on other people's lives, that's what I want to spend my time doing, as opposed to trying to following this set path that people say I should.
Mm.
I've lived a life of no label defines me, because like the duality of being a child of an immigrant in a school that's maybe predominantly white or something, it's pretty interesting, because you go to school and it's like you see these people and then you do these things and you come home and it's completely different, and you're like you're eating completely different cuisines and whatnot. So I think it's really important to believe in who you are, and not let anyone say who you should be, or what kind of person you are. Because really, if you just believe in yourself, I think anything is possible.
Yeah, that's really great. I like that. Um, yeah, to add on, I think in my life, no label defines me kind of refers a lot to who I see myself as. And who I see myself as, I think um, a lot of times we're too quick to define ourselves as one thing, when in reality, who we are changes so much over time, and who we are is so much beyond what even we can understand. So how is anybody else going to tell us what that is? And so at the end of the day, I think like, yeah, it's pointless to try and assign a label to yourself or anyone else. You should just do what you think is right.
Awesome, guys. And so, is there anything before we leave the audience today? Is there any one piece of advice, one piece of wisdom, or something that maybe I didn't cover that you guys want to touch on before we end our conversation?
Um, you got it, Anthony.
Sure. I'll provide one, which is something that I really realized after starting Big and Mini, and that's believe in your ability to make an impact. And anyone can make an impact, no matter who you are, no matter what you do. If you just believe in yourself, then you can go far.
Awesome.
I totally agree. Yeah, thank you so much for having us today.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, make sure and share this out. If you want to become a big or a mini, you heard it from these guys. The choice is yours. But head over to Big and Mini, the website. I'll drop all that stuff in the show notes so you guys can get connected. But join all of us on this mission to eradicate loneliness. And remember, loneliness is just you reminding you that you are meant for connection, my friends. And with that, you can catch us next week for another episode of No Label Live. I hope you enjoyed this episode of No Label Live. If you did, share it with a friend and tag me. Let me know your thoughts about the episode. Connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Loneliness Coach. You can also become a member of the No Label fam by joining our Facebook community. Let a friend know that they are more than a label. They matter, and they are one step away from their success. Remember, my friends, be patient, be diligent, and never quit.